So friends, ain't karma a bitch? The judge who tried to do her level best, and not just her level best, her fair, impartial, independent best to get Donald Trump to trial in the case in which a grand jury criminally indicted him for trying to steal the 2020 presidential election from we the people, Judge Tanya Chutkan just caught a new assignment. She will be the judge presiding over a lawsuit seeking the release of, among other things, the Epstein files. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, eventually all of Donald Trump's crime, corruption, abuse of power, not to mention abuse of the American people, will catch up to him, must catch up to him. And here is a new legal development that I think moves the needle in that direction. Here is some of the new reporting. This from the New Republic. Headline, Judge detested by Trump will oversee Epstein files case. Welcome back, Judge Tanya Chutkan. And that article begins, a lawsuit seeking a trove of government documents related to Jeffrey Epstein just got passed to the federal judge who made Donald Trump's life a living hell. U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan, who previously presided over Trump's federal election interference case, criminal case, will now oversee a new lawsuit from Democracy Forward Foundation, a D.C.-based nonprofit, requesting the Department of Justice and the FBI release any communications between Trump officials on the Epstein matter, any communication between Trump and Epstein himself, and Epstein's so-called client list that Attorney General Pam Bondi previously acknowledged having in her possession. In conjunction with several Freedom of Information Act requests, DFF, Democracy Forward Foundation, also requested expedited processing. DFF argued that the swift acquisition of the documents was a matter of widespread and exceptional media interest in which there exist possible questions about the government's integrity that affect public confidence, and that there was a particular exigency in light of Trump's refusal to rule out clemency, that is, a pardon, for Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's convicted co-conspirator. Among the records requested were all materials prepared or compiled by DOJ officials for Attorney General Bondi's review regarding the Jeffrey Epstein matter, which would likely include a list of Epstein's clients to whom he allegedly trafficked underage girls. Bondi had previously said that such a list was sitting on her desk ready to review, before later claiming it had never existed in the first place. Judge Chutkan had also overseen another case attacking DOJ's authority and more recently blocked the Environmental Protection Agency from withholding grant money. Now, friends, coincidentally, tomorrow here on Justice Matters, I'll be interviewing the president and CEO of Democracy Forward, the nonprofit organization that brought this lawsuit. Her name is Skye Perryman, and we'll be digging into some of the specifics of this lawsuit. But for now, I have a few quick thoughts and observations about the assignment of Judge Tanya Chutkan to preside over this FOIA, Freedom of Information Act lawsuit seeking the release of the Epstein files and lots of other relevant information and communications. And friends, if you've watched Justice Matters over the years, you've probably heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again. Judge Chutkan don't play. How can I claim that Judge Chutkan don't play? Well, back in the day when Tanya Chutkan was a public defender in Washington, D.C., and I was an assistant United States attorney in AUSA, a homicide prosecutor handling murder cases in the courts of D.C., I tried murder cases against Tanya Chutkan. And to say that she was a worthy opponent is a gross understatement. I know Tanya Chutkan, the public defender, the criminal defense attorney, as somebody who was fierce and fearless, an aggressive, zealous advocate on behalf of her clients, but also somebody who was entirely honest, ethical, trustworthy. She fought hard, but she fought fair. And given that she is now the judge who will preside over this latest lawsuit seeking the release of all things Epstein, I have seen her bring those same traits to her work as a federal court judge in Washington, D.C. She is fiercely independent, honest, ethical. She gives both sides, both parties, a fair shake, equal treatment under the law, but she is unflinching. And she proved that when she presided over Donald Trump's criminal prosecution for trying to steal the election from we the people before that case went away, largely courtesy of some Supreme Court justices who don't give a rat's ass about the express language of the Constitution. They decided to bestow absolute presidential immunity on Donald Trump in a ruling that Yale law professor and constitutional scholar Akhil Reed Amar said. In that ruling, the Supreme Court announced, they found that the Constitution itself is unconstitutional. I mean, for gosh sakes, the Constitution says a president must take care to faithfully execute the laws of the nation. And the Supreme Court said, to hell with that constitutional responsibility, to hell with that express language. We're going to say that a president of the United States not only needs to take care to faithfully execute the laws of the nation, but he can commit crimes in violation of federal law, victimizing the American people, and he can do it with impunity and immunity. Yeah, that shit's got to change. Just like Dred Scott had to change, and Korematsu had to change, and Plessy versus Ferguson, horrific Supreme Court precedent, separate but equal. Government-sanctioned, government-sponsored racial segregation. Yeah, that shit had to go too, and it did when the Supreme Court case of Brown versus Board of Education drove the last nail into the coffin of Plessy versus Ferguson's horrific separate but equal doctrine. And the presidential immunity case, Trump versus the United States of America, will have to go the way of Dred Scott, Korematsu, and Plessy versus Ferguson. We're going to make it our mission until our dying day to see to it that presidents once again have to remain faithful to the constitutional obligation to take care to faithfully execute the laws of the country. But boy, have I gotten off track, friends. This is not where I intended to go today. But justice really does matter. It matters to me. It matters to you. It matters to the American people who are being victimized and abused by a criminal president with the blessing, with the express permission of a corrupt Supreme Court. We need to start fighting like hell, or we're not going to have a country anymore. But I digress. Blood pressure back down. I'll edit all this out, friends. Don't worry. No, I'm sure I won't edit any of it out. Let me get back on track. There are some things that I really like about this lawsuit. For example, they use DOJ's own words and Pam Bondi's own words to make their point. For example, they highlight Pam Bondi's lies One day, when she's asked specifically and expressly about the Epstein client list, she says, "It is on my desk right now, and I am about to review it," and the implication, the inference is, she's about to release it. Trump and company have been promising the release of the Epstein files forever. Until she said, client list? No client list exists. I mean, if ever the people have a right to know what the hell their executive branch is doing, it's when the Attorney General lies to the American people about something of such searing public interest. And searing public interest in this information is one of the things that militates in favor of its release under the Freedom of Information Act. And think about this. DOJ is already on record in a public court filing saying, in substance, there is an overwhelming public interest in the release of information about the Epstein and Maxwell case, including the grand jury transcripts. They're on record as telling a court, absolutely, Judge, there is such an overwhelming public interest that we're asking you to unseal the Maxwell and Epstein grand jury transcripts so we can satisfy the public's interest. We can show them what's really going on in these cases, which I will add is absolute horseshit, because there will be very little of relevance and very little that hasn't already been disclosed in those grand jury transcripts if the judge does grant DOJ's motion to unseal them and release them to the public. Maxwell already went to trial. We're going to already know the information contained in those grand jury transcripts. But the point is, when Democracy Forward asserts, as a matter of fact, that these files and these communications that this FOIA lawsuit is now requesting in this new case being presided over by Judge Chutkan, there is really an overwhelming public interest. And don't take our word for it. Take DOJ and Pam Bondi's word for it, because that's the same justification they used in seeking to have the judge unseal the Maxwell Epstein grand jury transcripts. And there are other things that I want to dig into with respect to the filing of this lawsuit, and I'll be doing that in tomorrow's interview with the president and CEO of Democracy Forward, Skye Perryman. So I hope you'll tune in for that. But in the meantime, friends, I'm going to say it again. The way Donald Trump is governing is not sustainable. The way the Department of Justice is doing business is not sustainable. They're sending newly hired flunkies and lapdogs and sycophants and yes men and yes women into court, and they're getting crushed. Federal court judges are eating them alive, and some of them are being referred to bar council, their own state bar council, where they hold their law license for an ethics investigation and possible sanctions up to and including disbarment, as many other Trump-affiliated lawyers have been investigated, sanctioned, and disbarred. This is not sustainable. This will implode at some point. I don't know when. I don't know how. I don't know how much damage Donald Trump and his flunkies will be able to do before the implosion, but it will implode. And then it will be our job, our mission, our responsibility to go on a rebuilding mission to see what will rise up from the ashes so we can create and sustain an American democracy that is better than before, that has learned the lessons of, what happens when you put an aspiring dictator in the Oval Office, somebody who is determined to burn down all of the institutions of government so he can rule over the ashes. We will be there for the rebuilding mission. Because justice matters. Friends, thank you for sticking with me through a rambling and meandering Justice Matters video today. As always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.